question, provide a little encouragement, nurturing touch, etc. But then every student would have the best instructors in the world for calculus. Now multiply that by all your courses, and you see how transformative that would be. But they don't do that. They said, all right, Professor Johnson, take a little break away from your research on the non-Euclidean geometry and topology and infinite series designs, and go and teach intro to calculus. If Chancellor Birgeneau cared about you, wouldn't he require every single faculty member to undergo a teaching boot camp? Maybe they didn't learn it in their Ph.D. program, which of course they should have, because a Ph.D. is supposed to prepare you for the professoriate. But let's say they didn't. But if he cared about you, wouldn't he have required that every faculty member go through a boot camp on how to be a transformative, inspiring, outstanding teacher and mentor, by the way, because real growth occurs one-on-one, not in large lecture classes. And that unless that faculty member, no matter how well they did research, unless they could pass that boot camp and show that they were a brilliant, transformative instructor worthy of you, they'd have to take the course again. Just like you would if you failed that calculus course. But Chancellor Birgeneau doesn't care enough to do that. So he's got a little teaching center over there. I happen to know the former provost who was in charge of teaching and learning here, and it was pulling teeth to get any faculty to even voluntarily come at all for anything, any kind of teacher improvement. If Chancellor Birgeneau would care, wouldn't he have made faculty at least go through a few weeks of teacher training? There is no teacher training required. Zero, none. Maybe it's changed recently, I haven't checked lately. But to my knowledge, throughout the university, throughout the nation, it's not required. If Chancellor Birgeneau cared about you, would he have you sit in large lecture classes with 500 people over the television screen? Or would he have a class of 15 and have very interactive classes? Where would the money come from? Let's start with the $3 million that he recently spent on hiring Bain & Company as a consultant, as a business consultant, to the campus to kind of provide, to make suggestions on how to improve how well the campus is run. He's already spending millions of dollars on the budget office. He's got very expensive PhDs and MBAs in his budget office. You got the most prestigious high school of business there. If in that high school of business there aren't people who could help run this place, he had to spend $3 million? But it was more prestigious to bring in Bain & Company. What kind of stewardship is that of your tuition dollars, let alone tax dollars? And why wouldn't he, if he really cared about you and cared more about students? Does he really need a $500,000 a year salary? Wouldn't it be a wonderful example to, like all the professors here recommend, they talk about helping the poor. Why doesn't he give up some of his $500,000 and put it into student mentoring? He doesn't do that. Because it's not important. Students don't matter. He'd rather have his fancy house and his $500,000 a year. And that's his overt salary. I'm sure there's millions of perks that I'm not aware of. And also, dare I say this, when I was a student here, I used the RSF all the time. Loved it, had a good time. That cost many, many millions of dollars. There's other buildings like that. Is it really good stewardship of your of your tuition dollars and tax dollars to build that $10 million, whatever it cost, RSF?
Or the marble pool at Hearst Gym.
Or the marble pool at Hearst Gym?
I don't feel like I'm getting an education.
But he doesn't really care about students, he cares about status. And he's not, I'm picking on Berkeley because I'm here at Berkeley. This is nationwide.
It's global.
Huh?
It's global. I'm Australian, I can tell you it's happening in Australia.
Global, right?
Yeah.
Sorry for that one.
It's a play. He just spent $300,000 to bring Jennifer Granholm and hubby here to give two classes. Is that a good steward? If he really cared about students, would that be wise stewardship of $300,000? You know how much mentoring or tutoring he could buy? A peer mentoring training program for $300,000 so that every student was trained to be a great mentor, you could be paired off? They don't do that. They may do that at orientation. But as I said, one-on-one is where growth really occurs. If he really cared, he would do those things, but he doesn't. He'd rather fund more research on hermeneutics. If Chancellor Bergenow really cared about students, would he have you be 2 or 3 to a little room here at Berkeley, a situation in which if they put welfare recipients 2 to 3 to a room, the ACLU would sue in a minute and win. But it's cheap. So let's herd them 2 or 3 into a room. Let's put 500 students into a lecture class. Let's have as many TAs as possible because they're cheap. And I don't want to reiterate too much, but this is one of my most fervent beliefs about what could address the situation. Chancellor Bergenow and all the other college presidents cared about students. Wouldn't they prominently post a college report card on their website, which listed what is the actual 4 and 5 and 6 year cost of full cost of an education for different family income levels? What is the actual average amount of growth in reading, writing, critical thinking skills, public speaking, leadership skills, etc., disaggregated by a high school grade so that the students who are really great in high school can compare apples with apples? Wouldn't he put what percentage of people with different majors are professionally employed within 6 months of graduation? Wouldn't he post the results of the student satisfaction survey so that people could know how satisfied students were with all aspects of the student experience here at Berkeley? Wouldn't he post the accreditation report? The accreditation report, they come in and they review the school. Wouldn't he, if he was really interested in students making informed choices about this sanctimony, this sanctified, very important part of their life, where they're going to spend 4 to 6 years of their life as a springboard for the rest of their life, wouldn't he want students to make that informed decision? After all, the government requires that they mold into the sidewall of a tire their temperature ratings, their tread life, and their traction. And yet, and the government requires nutritional information, how much vitamin A is in that food, how much calcium is in that food. And yet neither he, nor the government, nor the media cares enough about you to give you that basic consumerist information that would help you to decide where to spend that $100,000 plus and 4 to 6 years of your life. That's the problem. Talked about some solutions, like in the college. If every college was required to post a report card, they'd be embarrassed and scared, and they'd be forced to improve because it's so embarrassing how little growth there is. But I want to talk about you and solutions for you. I am. This was an attempt to try to radicalize you, not politically, but in terms of realize what's really going on in terms of higher ed compared to what should ideally be. But here you are, you're already at Berkeley, and it's critical that you make the most of it as it is, and there still is a tremendous opportunity. You could take 2 groups of students at Berkeley, both of whom get degrees at Berkeley, and one group can have minimal value added, and another really grow a tremendous amount, despite the fact that Chancellor Bergenow doesn't care about you. And so this, on the handout, I came up with what I think are the 7 most potent ways that you can make sure you get the most possible out of Berkeley. As I said, change really occurs one-on-one. Most transformational change. Find the human being, professors, resident advisors, friends, whatever, whom you most respect and what I call metabolically resonate with. I'm clearly a very intense guy. Some people react well to that, other people hate it, right? So if you're incompatible with me, no matter how much you may or may respect me, if we're biologically incompatible, you get poor mentor for you. Find somebody who you react well to intellectually, emotionally, chemically, and treasure that, nurture that relationship. It could be as simple as going to a professor during their office hour and asking a question, a respectful, thoughtful question. It could be seeing your RA about the fact you're afraid you're pregnant. It could be whatever it is. But try to build a one-on-one relationship with the right people, with the people who are simpatico with who you are. Very important way to develop those relationships. There are some professors and some administrators and some people who do profoundly care. They do have that secular, spiritual recognition of the importance of you and nurturing you. And maybe even you can nurture them in some ways. You can help them grow. Because you guys are not chopped liver. There's a lot you can add to their lives too. Second, please carefully select your instructors. Whether, I don't know if Berkeley now has student ratings of faculty. Is it on the student government put together, student ratings of faculty, or you have to go to studentreview.com? Studentreview.com's got ratings nationwide of professors. But do carefully choose your professors. You know, even if you've got to go and ask a department secretary, administrative assistant, hey, you know, I'm scared, I got to take organic chemistry. Which one, there are 3 professors teaching it, which one is the really, not necessarily the easiest, but who is really a wonderful instructor? Be a great consumer, find the right teachers. Another of my favorite strategies is, if you want to enroll for 15 units, enroll for 18, 20. Go to the first class of each. If you sense the reading load is too heavy, it's not worth the effort, it's pain in the butt, too much work, or the class is boring, or get focused too much on arcana, drop it. One of my favorite rules is better to have a professor teaching something you don't care about, like Indo-European linguistics, if he or she is transformational, than somebody who's got maybe teaching a great title like wine tasting in the 21st century. Who's a bad teacher. Because there are some professors who are transformational. You got to find those. Ask your friends, whatever, but do it. Be careful in terms of choosing classes that matters. Prioritize in each course